Hi everyone, this is Mike Smith. In this short video I'm going to walk through how a user will access their email for the first time. So how to look at their email using Webmail through a browser, or how to set up an email account on a device such as a mobile phone or a desktop. So this is for the user perspective. There's another video that I'm preparing for the account manager. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so just as an example, I'm going to use this website, which is a relatively new website being set up on one of our servers, Brookside Villages. And typically when a new user has been added to this site and an email account set up, they will be sent a message with some instructions, and that message will look a little bit like this. Mail client manual settings. So let's have a look at what this all means. Okay, now the first thing you'll notice in this message is that there are three sections. This section, which is secure SSL settings, and that's, as you can see, that's recommended there. And then here we have non-SSL settings, which are not recommended, and I'll describe this in a moment. But just down here there's an interesting section which makes life easier for those people who are using Apple products. So attached to this message there will be like an automatic configuration file, and that's worth having a go at. So if you're using an iOS device or a Mac OS X running Mountain Lion, for example, you just click on that link and it will try to automatically set up your mail account for you. So for those people using Mac devices, that's the first thing to try. Okay, now let's have a look at these two sections here. SSL is secure and non-SSL is not secure. Now if you have a look at the website itself, you'll see that the website is running on what's called an SSL certificate. This is really essential now. In the past it wasn't, but now all websites really need to have HTTPS. And so as a consequence, for email you also need to use the SSL version. Theoretically this would still be possible to use non-SSL, but really it's insecure, a little bit dangerous, you can get hacked. Okay, so that's the first thing. We're going to use the SSL settings up here. Okay, so we're going to use secure SSL. Alright, now the first thing, of course, the username and the password. That's pretty straightforward. The username is generally the full email address. On some servers it's just the username before the @ symbol, but on our service it's the full email address. And the account password will have been sent separately. So that's the first thing. Okay, now before we go any further looking at these other settings here, let's just see where this information is going to be entered, on your computer or on your device. So looking over here, this is a typical setup screen for Windows 10 Mail app. And as you can see, there's boxes for email address, which is in this particular case on Windows, there's the email address and then there's a username. As I mentioned before, the email address is self-evident. On our servers the username is the same as the email address, but sometimes they're not the same. In our case you would probably put the same email address in both of these boxes, and then the password here. Okay, and as you can see there's some other boxes here. You've got a box for the incoming mail server and a port, and also outgoing mail server and a port. So let's have a look at what our settings are for that. Okay, now as I mentioned before, the incoming and outgoing server will be mail dot and then followed by the domain name, in this case brooksidevillages.co. Okay, and you can see there's port numbers here, but there are two ports. There's one for IMAP and there's one for POP3. Now for the outgoing server, the mail server is the same, as you can see, incoming and outgoing, and then there's also SMTP port 465. what's that all about? So now I'm just going to talk a little bit about the difference between IMAP and POP3. POP was very popular as an email protocol some time ago. IMAP now is probably what you actually want. And the reasons are to do with accessing your email from different devices. So this diagram attempts to show this, but I'm just going to focus on the right hand side here to tell you what POP does. So what it says is that clients independently download email. So this is the server over here. That's where your mail is stored, which is your hosting account. And then you might have a desktop computer here and a laptop computer here. The problem with POP is that generally the way that it's configured is that if you download your emails to your laptop, then they're deleted from the server, and so that email message that has been downloaded to the laptop cannot be also downloaded to your desktop. In other words, your desktop and your laptop get out of sync. Some of your messages are over here, some of your messages are over there, and of course that's going to cause a problem if you tend to swap backwards and forwards. And it gets even further complicated if you have another device, which happens to be your mobile device and maybe another tablet. So POP is not the way to go generally these days because people are using multiple devices. IMAP, on the other hand, basically synchronizes the message and also the folders that are set up on the IMAP server are synchronized between devices. So basically a device can access mail from multiple servers, but then also a server can serve email to multiple devices, and these two devices will see similar messages and folders. So obviously in today's environment where you're using multiple devices to access your email, this is the way to go. So IMAP. One other thing that you'll notice the difference between, at least as indicated in this diagram, you see these arrows are one way here, whereas the arrows for IMAP are two way. What that is trying to show is that, for example, if you send an email from your laptop over here using an IMAP server, you have a an inbox and a sent folder on your laptop. What will happen is that you also have an inbox and a sent folder on your, say, your desktop or your mobile device or your tablet. If you send an email from here, obviously on your laptop that email will be in your sent folder. IMAP takes care of this and makes sure that a copy of that sent email also becomes visible on your desktop and your mobile device. So not only your inbox is synchronized, but your outbox is also synchronized, and that's incredibly useful. Okay, so now you can see why we would strongly favor IMAP over POP. Okay, so let's go back to our standard Windows setup here. So the incoming IMAP email server. In this particular example on this screencast, you can see that that mail server has a particular format that starts with IMAP. That's not necessary on our servers. On our servers, as indicated in this mail message here, it's just mail.plus domain. Okay, so you put that in there, and then the port number goes over here. That port number is very important. And also, as you can see, there's a tick box. Incoming server requires SSL. We've decided that we are going to use SSL, so it's definitely that box needs to be ticked. And then while we're looking here, you can also see there's only one option for outgoing mail. That's SMTP. That's the send mail protocol. And the port number is different, 465. So that's what we put in here, 465. And then in our particular case, we also use SSL, and we also are going to require authentication. So so we would need to tick that box and that box as well. What this means is that this authentication means that the password that's used up here and the email address, the username, are actually used to send the email, and that has consequences as well. Okay, so that's the username, the password, the incoming mail server using IMAP and the port, and the outgoing server using SMTP and the port for Windows. Now, what if you're not using Windows? What if you're using another type of device? Well, the easiest way to find instructions for your particular device is just go to Google and type in mail settings and then whatever device you're talking about. So for example, Android, that's this one here. So it usually comes up first or second. So in this case for Android, it comes up first. How do I set up email? And here are some instructions here. Open your mail client, enter your full email address and password. So you can see those settings are here. Generally, you will need to use manual setup. As you can see, there's settings here for IMAP again. And if you were to follow this through, you would see where to enter all of those details that we discussed for the Windows account. Similar thing if you are using a Mac, so for example OS X or a MacBook or MacBook Air, the instructions are relatively similar. And on a Mac, on a Mac, the instructions are here as well. So as you can see, just follow the instructions. Taking care to focus on SSL. In other words, so for example, it says here port, internal port, external port, use TLS SSL or allow insecure authentication. So you don't want insecure authentication, you actually want SSL. Okay, so similar thing for an Apple phone or an iOS device like an iPad. Just use Google to look up the instructions just here. So for example iOS, and you can look up whatever operating system you need. Okay, so the important thing is, just returning back to our instructions, is that you use IMAP, highly recommended, and you also use SMTP for the outgoing server, and you also use secure socket layer for your settings in your mail device. Okay, so the first part of this video was on how to set up an email client on your device, your laptop, desktop, or mobile device. But now, just to finish this video off, I want to show you how to access email using what's called Webmail. So in other words, instead of using software on your device, just use your web browser to access your email directly. Now, this is a little bit like Office 365. It's a little bit like Apple Mail. It's just directly accessing your email on the hosted server. It's very simple to access, and that's what I'm going to show next. Okay, so let's imagine you've got your website up here, whatever the website is. In this case, it's brooksidevillages.co. At the end, so just click at the end of the address there in the address bar. Click there, then put a /, okay, and then type in Webmail, Webmail, Webmail like that. And then you'll get taken to a login screen. Don't worry about this this message here. That's just because I logged out previously. Okay, so email address and password. Now I'm just going to use another email account that's set up here for this website. I just want to show you what how this works. So in this particular case, admin, and I'll grab the password, pop that into here. So as you can see, we're not using our mail client, we're just using our web browser here. So I'll just log in. Okay, and then we end up at this screen. Now I'm just going to, I'll explain this in a moment, but just for now, I'm going to open Horde in a new tab and talk about that. Okay, so this is Webmail, and as you can see, there is a representation of mail, which includes an inbox, draft, sent. So you've got folder structure over here. You can create new folders, and here are your email messages in your inbox here. And you may notice that there are more tools at the top here. In fact, Horde is kind of similar to a free version of Outlook hosted on your web server. So I quite like Horde. It's very powerful, and quite often it's easier for me, from my point of view, it's easier for me to actually use Horde than it is to use a mail client. And the advantage, of course, is that you can log in from anywhere in the world, receive and send emails. So that's really powerful. Okay, so and yeah, you can just manage your mail from here, and then after you finish, just log out. Very simple. Okay, now let's go back to our original screen here. This was just after we logged on, and as you can see, there's two other options other than Horde here. So we can, for example, have a look at Squirrel Mail, which is a very popular email service or tool as well, again for webmail. And as you can see, you've got an inbox here, drafts and sent as well, but there's fewer tools across the top. Now I haven't set this up. I just need to set up my full name here and perhaps a signature, and then I'll be able to look at my inbox. But it's a kind of a similar thing. It's a bit simpler. It's a text only, not so much graphical, as an alternative to Horde. And as you can see, there's another one here called Roundcube as well. I tend to use Horde. You can set it any of these as the default. I tend not to set a default because I would like to be able to choose. It could be that I'm working on a really dodgy, slow internet account somewhere in a corner of the world. Then I'd probably use Squirrel Mail, but otherwise I'd use Horde. So I don't set any of these defaults. I just click on Horde. Now below here you can see Mail Client Automatics configuration scripts, and then below that are manual settings for mail clients as well. And these instructions are basically the same as what was originally received in this email message over here. Alright, so and if you lose it, that email message, you can actually have them sent again to, in fact, whichever email address you like. Okay, just above the manual settings, you can see the automatic configuration scripts. These sometimes work, often work, perhaps depending on the device, and you can just click on these links and it will have a go. It will attempt to set up your mail client. Generally, this works okay for the incoming server, but you may still need to fiddle with the outgoing server. Okay, and that's setting up Webmail, which is the second part of this video. Okay, so thanks very much for watching.